anniversary dinner at my parents' house followed the same script every year. My mother's lamb roast, my father's carefully chosen Bordeaux, and my sister Claire holding court about her latest milestone at the firm. So when she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the table toward my parents with that particular smile she saved for moments she's been rehearsing, I already knew what was coming before she said a word. They made me senior partner, Claire said. The room did exactly what she'd been picturing it doing. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. Dad pushed his chair back slightly, the physical version of making room for something big. Senior partner, he repeated, and the way he said it, slowly, deliberately, like a man reading a plaque being unveiled, told you everything about what the last 12 years of Sunday dinners had been building toward. At 36, he shook his head. Claire, that's extraordinary. Salary moves to 290 base, Claire added, plus origination bonuses. I could clear 400 this year if the Harmon litigation closes the way we're expecting. To Claire, Dad raised his glass. This is what real success looks like. This is what happens when you commit to something and see it through. The words landed the way they always land in that house, with their usual satellite, the one nobody says out loud, unlike your brother, who still hasn't figured out what he's doing with his life. Congratulations, I said, and I meant it. Claire had worked genuinely hard for that title. Whatever else is true, that part is true. Thanks, Dan. She smiled across the table, warm enough on the surface, with just enough edge underneath that only I heard it. Maybe this year you'll finally find something you can stick with, too. She was 36. I was 33. And for the past 8 years, every family gathering had featured some version of this. Claire's steady, prestigious legal ascent treated as a family's North Star, while my path was discussed the way people discuss a stain they've learned to work around. He's still doing the property thing, Mom told my Aunt Patricia, who'd come up from Connecticut for weekend, as if I weren't sitting 18 inches away with a functioning set of ears. We keep hoping he'll find something more stable, something with a future. The problem with real estate development, Dad said, shifting into a particular register he uses when he wants to sound like he's giving advice rather than delivering a verdict, is that you're always one bad project away from losing everything. No base salary, no institutional support, no clear upward trajectory. It's gambling with a better marketing budget. Claire nodded, the small, patient nod of someone who agrees, but is generous enough not to rub it in. I actually mentioned you to Tom Ellery last month, she said. He's the managing partner for our Chicago office. They're looking for someone to manage their facilities portfolio, the buildings they own, not the legal work. It's not glamorous, but it's real income, real benefits, a retirement plan. I could put in a word if you want. Get you a foot in the door. I looked at my sister. Facilities management. She was offering me a job managing the buildings of the law firm she'd just made partner at, and she thought she was being kind. That's thoughtful, I said. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. Daniel. Mom's voice had that particular note of gentle reproach she uses when she wants to sound patient rather than annoyed. We're having a family dinner. I pulled out to silence it and saw what was on the screen. 3 missed calls from Marcus Webb, my attorney, 2 from the escrow officer at the title company, and a text preview from my business partner Leon that read, "Wire confirmed. Full amount. Call me when you can." We did it. "I need to step out for a minute," I said, standing. "Of course you do," Claire said, not unkindly. "Property emergency?" Something like that. I walked to the back hallway and called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. "Daniel, congratulations. The wire transferred 47 minutes ago. $62 million as agreed. Clearwater RET's funds are confirmed. The sale of the Meridian complex is officially closed." I put my hand flat against the wall and let it hold me up for a second. The closing costs and your lender payoff come to just under $11 million total. Your 40% equity stake nets you approximately $20.4 million after taxes based on your structure. Leon's 30% nets him around 15. The remaining 30% to your institutional investors is being processed now. Congratulations. This is a significant outcome. I told him thank you and stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the numbers sit in my chest. 6 years ago, I had left a junior position at a mid-sized architecture firm in Atlanta with $11,000 in savings and an idea. A mixed-use development concept for a 6-acre underutilized parcel in East Austin that I'd identified through 18 months of studying municipal rezoning filings on nights and weekends while I was still technically employed. I spent the first 2 years living off credit cards, learning development finance in ways no classroom teaches you, getting turned down by 14 lenders, and sleeping 4 to 6 hours a night. I had mortgaged everything, including my apartment, twice. I had made payroll for my team out of my personal accounts when a capital call came in late. The Meridian complex, 212 residential units, 40,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space, a structured parking facility. Had taken 4 years from groundbreaking to this phone call, and the phone call had just told me it was done. I walked back into the dining room and sat down. Everything okay? Mom asked with a particular brightness she uses when she's preparing to pivot back to something more comfortable. Fine. I picked up my water glass. Good, because Claire was just telling us about the apartment they're looking at in Lincoln Park with her new compensation package. Ryan and I can finally actually afford to buy. Claire finished. We've been renting in Wicker Park for 4 years. It feels like the right time. That's wonderful. Dad refilled Claire's wine. That's what a real salary lets you do. Build equity. Make real decisions. Daniel, this is what we keep trying to explain to you. Stability opens doors. I understand. Do you though? Claire leaned forward slightly, and her voice shifted into the register she uses in depositions, the one that sounds caring but is actually pressing. Because you've been doing this development thing for, 6 years now, and you're still in that same apartment, still taking on projects one at a time. If it were really working, we'd see some kind of progress, some kind of security. She paused. What do you actually make, Dan? Because if things are going well, you should be able to say so. The table went quiet. Everyone looking at me. My father with his Bordeaux, my mother with her careful expression, my Aunt Patricia, who had the good grace to look slightly uncomfortable, Claire, patient and certain, waiting. I could have let it go, could have said something vague, and let the dinner move on, and driven home in the same comfortable invisibility I'd been living in for 6 years. I was tired of it, not the work. I had never once been tired of the work. Tired of sitting at this table being managed like a problem nobody wanted to say out loud. The Meridian Complex just sold, I said. The Austin project? Dad asked. The big one you've been working on. 212 units. 40,000 square feet of commercial, structured parking. Clearwater RIT acquired it. The wire transfer confirmed while I was in the hallway. Claire's expression shifted slightly. That's great, Dan. How much did they pay? $62 million. The lamb roast was getting cold. Nobody was looking at it. Dad set his wine glass down with the careful deliberateness of a man who is not sure how hard to set it down. $62 million. It wasn't a question. It was a man doing arithmetic in public. That's the sale price for the whole development. Yes, and your stake, 40% equity. After closing costs, debt payoff, and taxes, my net is approximately $20 million. Claire's wine glass was still in her hand, suspended. $20 million. More precisely, 20.4. Leon's 30% comes out to about 15. Our institutional partners take the rest. The silence was a specific kind that happens when a room full of people all recalibrate simultaneously at slightly different speeds. My Aunt Patricia made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Mom's fork was resting against the edge of her plate at an angle that suggested she'd set it down in the middle of a motion and forgotten to finish the motion. That's not possible, Claire said, and the moment she said it, she heard how it sounded, because she was smart enough to hear it immediately. I didn't know it was that scale. I know you didn't. You never told us, Dad said, and there was an edge in it now. The particular edge that arrives when someone discovers they've been confused about something important and needs to redirect that feeling outward. You never said it was anywhere near that size. I tried. You said you were working on a development project in Austin. I said I'd broken ground on a 200-unit mixed-use development with institutional backing. And you said it sounded like I was getting over my head and should consider partnering with an established firm before I overextended myself. Dad opened his mouth. That was at Christmas, 2 years ago. He closed it. Last Easter, I mentioned we were in preliminary discussions with several REITs about an eventual acquisition, and Claire said it was probably good to have a backup plan in case the Austin market softened. Claire looked at her wine. 6 weeks ago, I told Mom we had a signed letter of intent for the sale and were in final due diligence, and she asked if that meant I was going to have to find new projects soon and whether I thought about whether development was really the right long-term path for me. Mom's eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with celebration. We didn't understand what you were telling us. You didn't listen. There's a difference. So you're saying you're worth $20 million, Claire said, and the word worth landed differently than she meant it to. Liquid assets from this transaction. Approximately $20 million, yes. I also have equity in 2 smaller developments that are still in progress. Total net worth is closer to 28. $29 million, depending on how you value the unrealized assets. The number sat in the middle of the table next to the lamb roast and the Bordeaux and Claire's promotion letter, and it redistributed the weight of everything else in the room. My father's glass of wine that he'd raised 20 minutes ago for a $290,000 salary now sat in a slightly different universe than the one it had been poured in. I don't understand, Claire said, quietly this time, the deposition register completely gone. We live in the same city. I had no idea. You offered me a job managing the buildings at your firm 2 hours ago. She put her glass down. I know. You thought that was hopeful. She stopped. I thought you needed a way out of something that wasn't working. It was working. It's been working for 6 years. You just didn't have a language for it because it didn't come with a title and a base salary and a partnership track. Dad cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice had a quality I hadn't heard from before. Not anger, not confusion. Something closer to the sound of a man reviewing something he's already submitted and finding an error. Why didn't you make us understand? He said. What would that have looked like? Every time I tried to explain what I was building, the conversation ended with someone suggesting I needed a backup plan. The message, even when it was well-meaning, was always the same. What you're doing doesn't count until we can put in a category we already recognize. We were worried about you. Mom's voice was soft. You were performing a version of worry that felt a lot like not believing me. Those are different things. The table was quiet for a long moment. My Aunt Patricia excused herself to find the bathroom. Well, Mom said finally, with the tone of a woman trying to find the door in a room that's rearranged itself. This is wonderful news, Daniel. We're so proud of you. I looked at her. Are you proud of me or are you impressed by the number? Because I've been building toward this for 6 years. I was the same person last month when you asked if I considered going back to architecture. The only thing that changed tonight is that you learned what the wire transfer said. Nobody answered that one. I stayed for dessert because leaving dramatically wasn't something I was interested in. My mother had made her almond tart, and it was very good, and I genuinely had nothing left to prove in that room that the last 20 minutes hadn't already covered. After dinner, Claire found me in the kitchen while I was helping clear plates. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. I've spent 8 years assuming you were struggling and trying to help from that assumption, and I never actually checked whether the assumption was right. No, that wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. We stood there for a second, the two of us, the way siblings stand when the usual dynamic has been removed, and they're figuring out what the new one is. For what it's worth, she said, what you build is extraordinary. I deal with commercial real estate developers professionally. I know what it takes to get a deal of that size across the line. It's extraordinary. Thank you. Are we okay? We'll get there. I handed her a stack of plates. But Claire, I need you to actually want to know what I'm working on before I tell you about it. Not just listen when the numbers are big enough to demand it. She held my gaze for a second. Yeah, she said, that's fair. I drove home along the same streets I'd driven for 6 years in the same city, past the neighborhood I'd mentally underwritten for a potential future project, past the infrastructure I've been quietly reading for years the way my father once read legal briefs and Claire now reads case law. $20 million had transferred into my accounts while I sat at my parents' table being offered a facilities management job at my sister's firm. My phone had 37 unread messages. Leon Marcus, 3 institutional investors, 2 journalists who'd already picked up the public filing, and a former professor from my architecture days who apparently still followed my career more closely than my own family had. There was one text from Dad, sent 11 minutes after I'd left. It said, I'd like to see the Austin project sometime, if that's something you'd be open to. Proud of you, son. I stared at that message for a long time, not because I wasn't glad it was there, but because I was sitting with the question I always sit with when something like this lands. The same question that kept me going through 14 lender rejections and 2 refinancings, and 1 near bankruptcy, that nobody in that dining room had ever asked me about. What exactly are we proud of? The building I actually built, or the number that proved it was worth building? I ordered food and sat with it, and I let the question sit without forcing an answer, because I had learned over 6 years of developing things on my own terms that the best structures are the ones that take time to settle before you decide what to do with them. The next Sunday, I went back to family dinner. Dad asked actual questions about the development process, the kind that came from genuine curiosity rather than concern disguised as skepticism. Claire had clearly done some reading, because she asked about my capital structure in a way that suggested she actually understood what a capital structure was. Mom kept trying to make it a celebration, which I eventually let her, because she needed that and it cost me nothing. What are you building next? Dad asked over coffee. I've got my eye on a parcel in Nashville. Mixed use again, but larger. I want to incorporate more affordable housing into the commercial model. How large? If it goes the way I'm planning, the development value at stabilization could be around $90 million. Dad was quiet for a second. Then he said something he had never once said to me in 33 years at a family dinner table. Tell me how it works. So I did.